Look around the room. The phone in your hand was built from parts made on 3 continents. The coffee in your cup crossed an ocean. The car in your driveway is half imported even if the badge says otherwise. Every one of those prices carries a number you never see and never agreed to. You already know exchange rates exist. You've stood at an airport currency board and watched a trip get pricier between booking and boarding. That's obvious, and it's the only place the number ever shows its face. What's less obvious is that you pay one every day without converting a dollar. And it isn't set by people buying things. An exchange rate is the clearing price for the world's demand to hold claims on one economy. Its bonds, its deposits, its promise to pay you back. Goods just ride along. Understand that, and a price tag reads like a 2-line receipt. 1 line for the thing itself, 1 line for wherever the world's capital decided to park. And when you hear a currency has strengthened, you'll know who just got a raise and who just took a pay cut that nobody announced. Start with the clean version, the one that shows up in every introductory course. In the textbook, exchange rates are set by goods. If a basket of identical products costs $50 in one country and the equivalent of $70 in another, that gap is an opportunity. Buy where it's cheap, sell where it's expensive, pocket the difference. Do that at scale, and you push demand for the cheap country's currency up until the gap closes. The currencies drift until the same basket costs the same everywhere. Economists call it purchasing power parity, and it's elegant enough that The Economist has been publishing a version of it since 1986, using the price of a single burger as the basket. Underneath that sits the trade story. A country that exports more than it imports has foreigners buying its currency to pay for those exports. Demand rises, the currency appreciates. That makes its goods pricier abroad, exports slow, imports get cheap, and the whole thing self-corrects. It's a thermostat. Trade imbalances are supposed to be temporary because the exchange rate is supposed to fix them. It's an arbitrage exploit sitting in plain sight, and the market is supposed to patch it automatically. Here's the problem. That model describes something real, but on a timeline measured in decades, not in anything close to the horizon of your mortgage or your job. Because if goods set exchange rates, the amount of currency trading would roughly match the amount of stuff being shipped. It doesn't come close. Global trade in goods and services runs around $33 trillion a year. Divide that across the calendar and you get roughly $90 billion a day of commerce needing actual currency conversion. When the Bank for International Settlements last took its full snapshot of the currency market, in 2025, it counted daily trading of about $9.5 trillion. Sit with that ratio, because the ratio is the point, and it has held for decades. Something like 1% of currency trading has anything to do with someone buying something. 99% is capital deciding where to live. Which means the exchange rate is not a thermostat on trade. It's a scoreboard for one question: where does money want to be, and what's it willing to pay to get there? And the single biggest input into that question is the return on holding money in one place instead of another. That's the engine underneath the entire market. Borrow where money is cheap, park it where money is expensive, and collect the spread. Do it with enough leverage, and a 2-point difference in interest rates becomes a real business. Whole institutions exist to farm that spread, and every day they do, they're buying one currency and selling another, not because anyone wants goods, but because of the gap. It works quietly for years and then unwinds in an afternoon because everyone in the trade has to exit through the same door at the same time. The flow moves the rate. The rate then moves the price of everything that crosses a border. Nobody in that chain was thinking about your grocery bill. Consider what happened when Paul Volcker took the Federal Reserve into its war on inflation at the end of the 1970s. He pushed the federal funds rate to roughly 19% by the middle of 1981. His target was domestic, breaking double-digit inflation at home. But interest rates don't stay inside a country. Capital in Frankfurt and Tokyo looked at yields in New York that were multiples of anything available at home, and it moved. To buy American bonds, you have to buy American dollars first. Between 1980 and its peak in early 1985, the dollar appreciated by roughly 50% against major currencies. Nobody voted for that. It was a side effect, and it landed on American factories like a tariff in reverse. A machine tool built in Ohio suddenly cost 50% more to a buyer in Munich, with no change in the factory, the workers, or the product. Every domestic producer competing against imports got undercut on their own home ground. By September of 1985, the finance ministers of the 5 largest economies met at the Plaza Hotel in New York and agreed to deliberately drive the dollar back down. The Plaza Accord. The yen went from around 240 per dollar to roughly 120 within 3 years. Now hold that thought, because there's a version of this that ends far worse, and it explains why some countries try to opt out entirely. If floating rates can swing 50% on a policy decision made for unrelated reasons, the obvious move is to stop floating. Pin your currency to a stable one and eliminate the variable. Plenty of countries have done exactly that. The catch is a constraint that no amount of policy skill gets around. You can have free movement of capital across your borders. You can have a fixed exchange rate. You can have a central bank that sets interest rates for your own economy's needs. You can have any 2 of those 3. Never all 3. It's a skill tree with 3 nodes and 2 points, and every country in history has had to pick. The reason is arithmetic, not ideology. If your rate is fixed and money crosses your border freely, anyone can borrow at your rate and lend at the world's rate the moment the 2 diverge. So your rate can't diverge. Setting interest rates for your own economy means accepting that money leaves when you cut, and the currency falls when it leaves. Try to hold all 3 and you invite a very specific kind of attack. A currency peg is a boss fight where the health bar is public. Everyone can watch a central bank's foreign reserves drain in real time, and everyone can do the arithmetic on how many days are left. In September of 1992, Britain was pinned inside Europe's exchange rate mechanism at a level its economy couldn't support. The Bank of England raised its base rate from 10 to 12% in a single day and announced 15, burning reserves to defend the line. By evening, it had withdrawn from the mechanism entirely. Traders who bet against the peg made fortunes, not because they were profits, but because they could read the constraint. Thailand ran into the same wall in July of 1997, and the collapse of the baht rippled outward into a regional crisis. Argentina held $1 to 1 peso for a decade before that arrangement broke in 2002. And in January of 2015, the Swiss National Bank abandoned a ceiling it had defended for over 3 years. The franc rose almost 30% in minutes, and Swiss exporters woke up in a different country than the one they'd gone to sleep in. Here's where this stops being macroeconomic trivia and starts touching your paycheck directly. Your wages are set in one currency. Your consumption is not. That mismatch is the entire mechanism applied to you. When your currency weakens, nothing about your job changes. Your salary number is identical. Your effort is identical. But the electronics, the fuel, the imported components inside domestically assembled products, the pharmaceutical ingredients, the coffee, all of it reprices upward because it's bought with a currency that now buys less. That's a pay cut. It arrives without a meeting, without a memo, and without anyone being responsible for it. It's the cleanest example in economics of a change to your standard of living that never appears on your pay stub. And it doesn't stop at the grocery bill. When imported prices push inflation up, the central bank responds by raising interest rates, partly to cool the economy, partly to make holding that currency attractive again to the capital that just left. Those rates travel straight into your mortgage, your car loan, and the balance you carry on a credit card. The currency market and your monthly payment are connected by a mechanism most people never trace. There's a second-order version that catches almost everyone. If you hold an index fund with international exposure, part of your return isn't the performance of those companies at all. It's a currency position you never opened. Foreign stocks can rise all year in their home market and still land in your account flat or negative, purely because of the conversion. You are, whether you meant to be or not, already trading currencies. Which brings us to the part that gets the winners and losers exactly backwards. Most people assume a strong currency is a national good, a scoreboard reading that means the country is winning. It isn't a report card, it's a transfer. A strong currency is a subsidy paid to anyone who consumes imports, and a tax levied on anyone who produces things that compete with them. If you're buying, traveling, or importing components, strength is a gift. The travel version is just the transfer with the lid off. Same 2 weeks, same hotel, same itinerary, priced 20% apart in different years. Nothing changed but the conversion. It's the one time the mechanism hands you an itemized receipt, which is exactly why most people think that's where it lives. If you work in a factory whose competitors are priced in another currency, that same strength is a wage cut and eventually a layoff, delivered by a mechanism that has nothing to do with your productivity. That was the story of American manufacturing in the early 1980s. The workers didn't get worse. The exchange rate got worse for them. Devaluation runs the same transfer in reverse. Exporters get more competitive overnight. Importers and consumers pay for it. Anyone on a fixed income, a pension, an annuity, a long-dated bond, absorbs the loss quietly because their payment is contractually fixed in a currency that's buying less every month. The most severe version shows up when a country's debts are denominated in someone else's currency. Devalue and your export revenue rises while the real burden of your debt rises faster. The escape hatch and the trap are the same door. That's the pattern behind most emerging market crises of the last half-century, and it's the reason a weak currency isn't automatically a policy win. There's one more layer, and it explains why the textbook thermostat fails even when the rate moves in the direction it's supposed to. Most global trade isn't invoiced in the currency of the country selling the goods. It's invoiced in a handful of dominant currencies, overwhelmingly the dollar, which, at last count, was on one side of roughly 9 out of 10 currency trades in the world. So when a country's currency falls, its exports often don't get cheaper for foreign buyers because the price was never quoted in that currency to begin with. The import side reprices immediately. The export side lags for months or years. The adjustment mechanism runs on a cooldown, and the pain arrives first. It cuts the other way for whoever issues the dominant currency. Their imports are already priced in their own money, so a falling currency reaches their shelves slowly and partially. That's the quiet privilege of issuing the asset everyone else settles in, and the reason the same mechanism bites two countries at very different depths. Step back and look at the whole map. An exchange rate is not a price of goods, and it's not a national score. It's the market's continuously updated quote on how much it trusts an economy's institutions to protect the value of a claim. Interest rates, inflation credibility, political stability, the depth of the bond market, the enforceability of contracts, all of it gets compressed into a single number, and that number gets applied to everything you buy. That architecture is not a law of nature. It was built. In 1944, at Bretton Woods, the major economies pinned their currencies to the dollar and the dollar to gold. That system ran until August of 1971, when the gold window closed and the world moved to floating rates. Everything since has been a choice about which two nodes on that three-node tree a country is willing to hold. If this kind of breakdown is what you want more of, subscribe to 8-Bit Economics. We strip complex financial systems down to their core mechanics. No hype, no predictions, no forecasts about where any currency is headed next. If this changed how you think about a price tag, hit like. And drop a comment with the version of this you've seen in your own life. The imported thing that quietly got more expensive. The price that moved while the product didn't. By the time everyone sees it coming, the smart play is already over. So here's what you can see now that you couldn't before. Every price you pay is two prices stacked on top of each other. There's the cost of making the thing, labor, materials, shipping, margin. And underneath it, there's the world's ongoing verdict on the currency you happen to earn in. You negotiate the first one. You have no vote on the second, and the second moves more. That's not a flaw in the system. It's the design. A floating exchange rate is a shock absorber. It lets an economy adjust without forcing wages and prices to fall one by one, which is slower and considerably more painful. The cost of that shock absorber is that the adjustment lands on everyone at once, unevenly, and without notice. Every currency is a promise. An exchange rate is just the world quoting a price on how much it believes you. You will never see that number printed on anything. It's in every total you pay.